I'm very happy to introduce you to our panel. Today we're going to talk about investments in sustainability, available tools and models. My name is Edith Aldewereld. I'm one of the founders of Women in Sustainable Finance, which is based in, our headquarters is in Switzerland, where we actually empower women to act and transform the financial industry into a sustainable one. So for people in the financial industry as well as for investors. And we all think that sustainability is about purpose. So it's about how actually can we have our companies and our countries grow in line with the resources of our nature. And I'm very happy to have this diverse panel today where we come from different regions with different backgrounds to speak about their purpose and how we can create together and discuss this together, and also to learn from each other what are actually the best learning practices and what can we do best to move forward to make our economy and our companies more sustainable. So I'm very happy to introduce you to Giacomo Zamboni. He is the deputy manager of Henley and Partners. He is at the left side. And his company is one of the leading companies also helping people, private individuals, to immigrate to different countries. Then we have next to him, we have Mr. Linar Yakupov. He is advisor to the Prime Minister of, and now I have to check my notes to be sure that I'm doing the right thing, to the Republic of Tatarstan, correct? He has and owns next to that also the Yakupov Group, which is producing halal products and does also trading and distribution. And I'm very pleased also to announce that he has been awarded with the prestigious Global Islamic Finance Award. And we're very happy to have you on board. Then we come to our next panel member. Also from a diverse point of view, I'm very happy that she's in here today. Navroop, Sahdev, I'm very happy to have you here. She is the founder of the Digital Economist and Rethink Markets. I like this phrase. She's a pioneer economist and a technology futurist. And what that means in practice, she will share more information about it, is she's combining emerging technologies with economical science and business strategy. So very happy to have you here also on blockchain and see what the future will bring on available tools and models. Then we have here on my right-hand side for you at the left, we have Mr. Boris. Korchemkin. He's the CEO of Aon, which is one of the largest international insurance companies in the world, and he's the managing director for Russia and CIS countries. So actually his company has more than 50,000 employees in more than 120 countries. So today, please feel free to interact anytime you would like, because we would like to make it lively, also for you, and as interesting as possible. What we would like to do actually is also to guide you from history. So what have our companies and countries been doing successfully in the past? Where do we stand now? And what available tools and models do we need actually to make a sustainable future going forward? So I would like to each one of you, and also you can be very interactive. What has your company and organization been doing successfully to invest in sustainable products and solutions in the past? Boris, I would be happy to hear your view from Aon.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm very glad to be the first speaker this morning. Well, Aon is a global provider of risk management solutions and insurance brokerage services. So we've been helping our clients and helping different stakeholders, whether it's national governments or private investors or investment funds, to invest into sustainable companies. And the message that I wanted to send, which is very clear, is obviously if you're doing business in the old-fashioned way, if you're only about getting about immediate profits to your shareholders and you don't care about the future, in some cases you would still be okay. You would still get some financing, but given that we live in a very competitive world, and given that we're talking about Caspian Region, which is definitely very attractive and potentially very prudent, still at the present time it's challenging. So we're all competing. We're competing whether it's finance, we're competing for resources, we're competing for people. So you have to be sustainable. And the promotion that we as a company do for our clients and prospects is that You have to be sustainable, otherwise you will not be competitive. You will not be able to get financing at competitive terms. You will not be able to get guarantees, because again, insurance is about guarantees, right? There are many companies, and the number of such companies is growing every day, that are simply sending a message that we as a bank, we as a financial institution, or we as an insurance company, we're not going to support businesses that are not sustainable. Some industries, for example, coal, are facing major challenges in getting financing and insurance for certain countries. So we are promoting sustainability by providing more attractive, more favorable terms to help companies become successful and competitive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if I understand you correctly, it's also about being international, be co-creation, and also make sure that also from the financial and insurance industry, I come from the financial industry where there's a lot of discussion going on, how sustainable is the financial industry? On one hand, we say we invest only in sustainability, but on the other hand, we still give credits to companies which are less sustainable. And I definitely agree that there is a big challenge going forward, but also a big opportunity going forward in providing finance to companies who are really sustainable to make a statement. You're very well suited in blockchain technology, also new technologies. How do you see actually what has been going on in the past, and also where do you see actually where it's going? Very keen to hear your view. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. So I'll just take a step back and say I started my career at the UN Environment Program in Geneva. That sort of turned me into an environmentalist. But you know, it's more of a, as an economist, you know, we talk a lot about competition, about sustainability. We talk a lot about market movements, and you know, this panel is focused on investment. But if you really fundamentally think about economic systems, the idea of competition, the idea that you have to outcompete others, is one of the core reasons why we are where we are. It has driven us to a point of, you know, where things are not sustainable. And then you have to fundamentally think about what are we trying to sustain. Right? I spent my summer last year in Costa Rica, and I learned about regenerative agriculture. And in fact, we are at a point where sustainability is not enough. We need to actively regenerate ecosystems. So that's fundamental. And I think the issue so far has been that it has been, you know, the Sustainable Development Goals or sustainability versus business as usual. So as an economist, my focus is on what are those models that would facilitate the transition, not disruption, but transition to a sustainable future, right? And so what does that take to move away from control more towards access? And we have, you know, global commons, 100 years of literature on global commons. Linar, who was the first economist who won the Nobel Prize in economics, she wrote a book on governing the commons. So, and how do you take care of shared community resources? So that's fundamental. So with that, coming on to today, the future, what we're doing here is the Digital Economist, which is pulling forth these emerging technologies and talking about the convergence of these technologies. And again, the business models that define it, right? And again, putting human at the center, and what does that take, you know, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? So very much focused on that. So I've partly, I think, implicitly answered your question on what is it going to take. Well, it's going to take economics to get there. So that's the biggest challenge I see with corporations as well, that they have to move away from you know, this control mentality where they have to actually take care of the resources and control them more towards, well, how do we create shared value, and how do we share a piece of the pie without overrunning the system?
Thank you very much. And I fully agree with you that it's very important that we're not only talking, but that we're also acting. and it's a transition. So it means we've been doing business in the past, and we came to a certain point where we realized this is not sustainable with the resources of the planet. So the way moving forward should be different. So I fully agree with you, and also that only acting enough is even in some cases not enough, because we need to rebuild systems which already have been damaged in such a way that we can't, or that it's very difficult already to sustain them. Mr. Yakupov, we have the honor to have you from the corporate side as well as from a governmental side. So we're very keen to hear your view on how business has been doing in the past, how economy has been built in the past, and where do you see actually, where are the learning effects from that, and where do you see it going forward? If I'm not mistaken, you have one of the microphones next to you.
Thank you very much. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think when the moderator announced about the Republic of Tatarstan, most of you might be confused, thinking that it is most probably part of Central Asia that you haven't heard before. But actually it is part of, very integral part of Russian Federation, tiny republic with 4 million population. It's like 1,000 kilometers to the northeast from Moscow, basically 1 hour flight. And it is one of the most economically developed region of Russian Federation. Certainly geographically we are integral part of Russian Federation, but spiritually, and there's also one more reason why I'm sitting here thinking that I'm part of Caspian Week, is that the Caspian Sea, we believe, starts from our republic, because that's where starts Volga River, and Volga River is the main feeder for Caspian Sea. So we think certainly Republic of Tatarstan is part of this greater Caspian region. And then historically we were always within the economic cooperation, trade with Central Asia and our neighbors like Kazakhstan, almost like immediate neighbors, and then and then some other republics of Central Asia. Regardless whether we were before the Soviet Union or during or after, still I think we are one of the catalysts of cooperation within the region, because from economic perspectives we are very much diversified. And basically if you look at Tatarstan's economy, it is like mini Russian Federation, because we got oil industry, we got chemicals, petrochemicals, huge manufacturing, airplanes, trucks, ships, and a lot of other things, electronics, and now IT industry, and a new city called Innopolis, and a lot of other initiatives that makes Tatarstan one of the leading regions of Russian Federation. So promotion of Tatarstan, I put full stop. Now, let's talk about the Caspian region.
Thank you.
The Caspian region, basically, it's about, I still believe it is more about cooperation of Turkic-speaking part of it. Language is very important, and we were just talking with almost the same name as mine, Jacopo, and about the similarities of our regions. For 70 years, we were all part of Soviet Union and sharing the same values and common language and things like that. And at a certain point of time, after 20 years being apart from each other, I thought that it doesn't work anymore. But last, I think 2, 3, 4 years, I've been very actively working within the Caspian region. I understand that Russian language is really a tool for us to get back together, and the volumes of trade between the countries are really going up, because I think it's impossible to ignore your immediate neighbors. And whatever economic system which was built during Soviet time, yes, it was torn apart, but then it's coming back again. And we try to find out more value added to our cooperation. And then it's not only about oil and gas, it's about diversifying our economies to something new. And we talk a lot about new economy, about digital economy and some other things, but I think one of the major points that our regions overall have, that not many people know about us. Promotion definitely plays a very big role, and when you talk people about Caspian region, about Caspian Sea, they know, okay, sea, yeah? But it's not sea, it's a lake, right? Sea, lake, where is that? Where does it go? Everybody got confused. So then we tried to figure out, okay, we got access to Black Sea, and then we have, we also have the airplanes, ports, and things like that, and trains that are linking us to each other. But then, what are the things that make our regions to be attractive for people to come to explore? I think one of the latest initiatives that really took to the international level is creation of Astana International Financial Center. And I think this is for the first time when entirely new approach, introducing the British law, introducing the international arbitrage and things like that, came into the picture, and then somehow it became a platform. In the beginning, everybody doubted about it, but now it's getting more and more a solid platform for our companies to get together and be the frontier kind of things to interact with other countries. And I'm sitting in two advisory boards of Astana International Financial Center, which is based in the city of Nur Sultan, the capital of Republic of Kazakhstan. One on Islamic finance, another one is on green finance. For now, we have more than 330 companies there, representing basically all the CIS countries, plus there's a lot of emphasis on dealing with Muslim world. And so coming up with kind of new indicators, new magnets to promote our regions and to create new platforms is very important from, I think, from sustainability point of view. But then I think the signals that we are also doing now for international community is that we are prepared and ready to work based on the standards which are very well accepted in the world. And it's not about come with your investment, it's about also the commitment of the governments to those investments. And here we start talking a lot about PPP. And within the last 20 years, I've been involved in Islamic finance, halal industry, renewable energy, and lately, last 2-3 years, actively involved in the development of healthcare industry, hospitals, medical education, and things like that. And this is where we realize that we really have to look at those international standards, bring them in. A lot of changes are happening, and standard things are not working anymore. And this is where we start cooperating with our American partners, with Canadians, with Saudi, with Malaysians and European partners, because playing by international rules is something very important, and if it is backed up by the government, definitely people will come and support those initiatives. And from the movements, from the activities that we have for the last 2-3 years, I can really see that it is two-way communication, the two-way, how to call it, like going forward kind of relationships. And PPP, I think, will be something that, and it is actually, and will be something that will create a new kind of industries that we didn't really have before. And that's why I think, I could say that one is creating new kind of magnets. Second one is creating a new type of ways to cooperate, and this will give kind of sustainability to our region for future industries and for new sectors to come.
Thank you so much, because I think it's very important what you say is that you, from different perspectives and in different corporate divisions, you're talking about healthcare, you're talking about the country and your region. It's very important to find co-creations and also to have international expansion and find co-creation internationally. I will come back to that also in the next question. Giacomo, I'm very happy to hear your view actually, because you have been supporting so many people internationally to move from one location to the other. What movements have you seen? What difficulties have you faced? And what are your lessons learned from the past so far?
Thank you. So on one hand, it's quite surprising that I'm here, considering my ignorance of the region compared to many people in this room. But I've learned a lot, and I've taken the liberty to read about history of the region. So let me actually connect to two terms that were used by the other panelists. One is regional cooperation. I think this is very important. And while I was reading about history of the region, there was a situation, well, many hundred years ago, when regional cooperation was on the table. It was not accepted, and a certain Genghis Khan, let's say, decided to act in a way that destroyed local economies in the region. So I think regional cooperation is a very good alternative to war and conflicts if we want to look at extreme consequences. Nevertheless, the other term that is used, and it's also part of the title of the panel today, sustainability. I think it's a used and abused term. So I actually just want to give you a bit of framework as to what I mean by sustainability. I will not be talking. I actually want to show some slides, just because then it's easier for the other panelists to either agree with me or attack me. I will talk more about when our company interacts with authorities and governments. Sustainability means everything and nothing, right? Because if, as you said, a country relies a lot on coal, and suddenly it is hard to attract investors into their coal industry, and they lose jobs in that sector, this might not be seen as positive in the immediate. Maybe in the long term they agree, but they have to make a political decision as to whether this is sustainable for their local population, who in the meantime need to earn money to buy food. Okay? So I will not be talking about that. I will actually mention the points where when we interact with authorities, they tend to agree on what sustainability means. Okay? So authorities usually agree that investments in their countries are good, but at the same time, too much of everything is bad. Because if you invest, you want profits. If you invest in a country and you make profits, usually the shareholder is abroad, you take those profits out. I'm not saying investments, foreign direct investments are bad. It's just that too much of everything has consequences. And governments usually tend to agree with this. Second point, some economies are very successful but very focused, very specialized, and it's very, very difficult to diversify, right? So it might be easy for certain regions to attract investors because they're very good in oil production, right? But they might have very other little sectors which might be appealing to foreign investors. And third, foreign investments are good, but governments are worried that these foreign investments are not really foreign investments at all. So it's what the IMF calls round-tripping. So it's local funds which were exported, right, and just reinvested, appearing as foreign investments. And then we go back to square one, and then the profits are exported. So this is what usually authorities we interact with are worried about. And so we help them amend their legislation in such a way they can attract funds in such a way that these risks are mitigated. Okay, so I just will speak 3 more minutes just to show you some examples around the world. They're not exhaustive. It doesn't mean they will work for the Caspian region. I will not actually refer to specific countries in the region because our company is already has already managed to convince certain countries in the region to adopt our approach. So you will see developments in that regard soon. But I would like at least to show you how other countries have done it and what it means. Okay, so you actually realize what I'm talking about. So since we're in Switzerland, I just want to show you this table. So how does Switzerland attracts talents and funds in various ways, and I'm not talking about their banking sector or other highly technological firms. I'm talking about the fact that they attract wealthy individuals from abroad because it allows them to negotiate how much taxes they will pay in the next foreseeable future. So I'm oversimplifying, so if there's any Swiss tax advisors in the room, I apologize, but I just want to get the message across. So in principle, it works like this. Wealthy foreigner, wealthy investor comes and says, okay, I relocate here, I will spend money here, I will enroll my kids in local schools, I will be integrated, I will pay a certain amount of taxes. And the bare minimum, if you're a person who is non-European, will be $250,000 more or less. Minimum in tax liability per year. Okay? So just since we're in Davos, you probably won't see in the back, but there's a line, we're in Graubünden, there's about 230 families that have decided to do it here in the region. So how much money does this bring to Switzerland? Just to show you the numbers. It brings about 1 billion francs per year. Of course, on the overall tax revenue that Switzerland has, it's not a lot, but still with 1 billion you can do also good things in Switzerland, right?
Is 1 billion a lot also for Tatarstan? It's worthwhile, right?
I think many of the regions that are represented here today have the ability to earn hard currency from abroad, but still, if you have an investor who invests, we go back to square one, right? This has advantages, it creates local jobs, but still you have a foreign liability, right? A credit is always a debit, depending on which side you are on. So Switzerland, of course, also this is not free money. They will have new residents, so they need to ensure services are at high enough level to justify such high tax liability. Okay. Another example, and then I'll go very quickly from here. Portugal, they attract investments into real estate. In return for such investments, people have a residency permit. Okay, it doesn't oblige people to live there, but they can. They also provide preferential tax regimes for new residents, so this can be combined with this. Numbers again, Portugal, like other European countries, faced a crisis in the recent past. So just to give you a number, foreign direct investments in Portugal in 2014 represented about 13% of foreign direct investments. Right, so I was looking at statistics while I was having coffee. So if we look at Turkmenistan, foreign direct investments in net FDIs in 2018 were about 2 billion. So this would be about, if they had the same percentage of FDIs attracted as Portugal, it would be about 200 million. Not bad, but still significant. Or Azerbaijan, they had 4 billion FDIs. This would mean an additional 400 million. Okay, just to give an example of what we're talking about. Then very quickly, most of the countries in the Caspian region don't have high debt. But for example, when it comes to another European country, which is Malta, which basically says, if you help my country, if you transfer funds to my country, which they will use for charitable purposes, so they will help those in need in Malta. They will also grant citizenship, potentially. So Malta now is one of the fastest growing countries in Europe for this and other reasons. But since the program was implemented, they reduced their public debt significantly, over 20%. So Antigua, same thing. Here's 20% reduction, sorry. So they reduced public sector debt from 100% to 80%. Okay, so very quickly, and then I'm done, because one of the objections I face is usually, okay, these countries are small, and so this is a way to attract funds. But it's not only small countries that do this, because it's not just about money, it's also about increasing the interaction of these countries and the local authorities with talented people. I'm not saying all wealthy people are talented. There's no, I don't know if anyone ran statistics on or studies on this, but there is a high correlation. At least this is what we see in our company, since we interact with very talented entrepreneurs. So countries, even large countries like the US, Italy, Canada, UK, they have similar programs where people can invest, and in return for such investment, they get some sort of benefit, be it tax or be it an immigration benefit. Okay, and then maybe I will give you the objections that probably the other panelists want to raise, just to make this a bit more lively, since it's still morning. With this approach, we solve the first three sustainability issues that I mentioned. Okay, but this approach raises other sustainability issues. And this is probably my key takeaway. I don't think there's ever a free lunch, right? Sustainability is about making decisions, okay? So if you look at, if a country decides to do what I'm saying, amend their immigration laws, tax laws, etc., they need to be careful, because immigration to a country means emigration from somewhere else. So you're gaining someone else is losing someone. So Switzerland is gaining a very important taxpayer. Foreign country like Italy, let's just name Italy since I'm Italian, loses a significant taxpayer. The others are self-explanatory. So since I've spoken a bit too much already, I'll let you read them on the slides, and I leave the other panelists to interact. Thank you.
Navroop, go ahead.
So yeah, I just want to disagree with a bunch of things, actually. I think what you just described is a macroeconomic system of incentives that perpetuates the system the way it is, which is the wealthy people can buy anything in the world, including citizenships. I don't see how that's helping sustainability in any way, shape, or form, right? I think the conversation is really about what does it take to transition from the way currently things are to where it needs to be. So FDI is an important tool. I come from India, which faces the worst brain drain in the world. And at the same time, we also have the highest remittances in the world, which is the flip side of it, right? And so what you see in the world, in the global economy, is this two-part system, right? The core and the periphery. Who all knows about it? Raise your hands. The core and the periphery. So Western countries which are at the core, wealthy countries like the United States or Switzerland, continue to attract capital, continue to attract talent, while the rest of the world loses it continuously. So I think what needs to happen for investing, and I see investment as the fastest tool to inject energy into the system. I do some venture capital on the side, mostly early stage and emerging tech, is to really create these innovation hubs which don't just copy the way things currently are, but are unique, local, and are plugged in with the communities, right? So maybe in the Caspian region, there are a lot of lessons to learn around the way people are taking care of their natural resources, which perhaps Switzerland needs to learn about, right? And so rather than superimposing the same systems, structures, measures on the rest of the world, I mean, that's why we are at the brink of where we are at this point. Great presentation, but 15 years of economic thinking, learning, teaching. I think we really need to turn things on their heads on what we're doing. And I would just jump in and say tomorrow we are launching the Digital Economist, which is really how emerging tech is the driver of the waves of global economic transformations. And so what does it take, to have the human at the center of it, and the conversation on sustainability as key part of it. So bringing investable opportunities to the fore. And I think you mentioned before, work, with women in sustainability. So some of the biggest randomized controlled trials have been done in India. And by Jacopo, which is Jameel Poverty Action Lab out of MIT. I'm also a fellow at MIT Media Lab. And they found that if you put money in the hands of men, they end up spending it on alcohol, cigarettes, right, so all kind of gambling. But if you put the money in the hands of the woman, she spends it on the well-being of the family. She spends it on the well-being of the children, which is, and this is tens of thousands of people, right, that are in these studies. So maybe that says a lot about where we need to invest when it comes to investing in sustainability. So I'll pause here.
Yeah, that's why you see that a lot of impact investments are actually, I think, 80 to 90% of the capital is actually invested with female entrepreneurs, because then they have more than 95% possibility that the money is returned. You sustain a whole family, and with this family you sustain a whole economy. So we see this trend going forward.
We should call it invest in women, huh?
Definitely.
Invest in women. That should be the new way, right?
That's why we have, and that's why I have co-founded together with Marta Ra, Women in Sustainable Finance, to empower women to act, actually to become more diverse in C-suite companies also, and also to invest investors to move the capital much faster into sustainable investments. And that's also, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I think it's quite common that every conversation, sooner or later, ends up talking about women. So I think we are in the same track now, right?
Yeah, the woman also wants to say,
now,
if we want to have an equal or
yes, of course we are for equality, right?
Exactly. Yeah, but then we need to move to it together. Not only women alone can do it. We need to engage. We all need to engage to set a new standard, because it's about creating new standards to make this world more sustainable and to live actually in balance with the global resources of our planet. So it's asking something from all of us. I would like to go to the last question.
We believe in partnership, right?
So, thank you. Yeah. I love co-creation. Let's discuss it later on.
Can I just say something about FDIs? And
sure.
I think not only our countries, but most of the countries for the last 20 years, when they talk about FDI, they're not really worried about the country's portfolio that those investments are coming from. As long as the money is coming in, everybody was happy. But I think a certain kind of disbalance took place. And most of the Central Asian countries are very much concerned, and I noticed this within the last 2 years. Countries are trying to figure out how the new ways of attracting other countries. Somehow or other, China became the dominant investor in most of the countries, and from security point of view, I think most of the governments are not happy with that thing anymore. With all my respect to Chinese, and when I was Minister of Investment of Tatarstan, and China was one of the great countries that I was working with, and they really did great technological investments to Tatarstan when the largest company Haier came in, and they set up research and development and the whole industrial park and things like that with almost $2 billion investment. But I think when it comes to strategic kind of investment projects, most of the countries, they show their concern, and they are trying to attract some other countries, which is quite difficult when China is so aggressive. And other countries are rather looking and, will be estimating a lot of times before they come in. So I personally came up with my own formula whereby I think the best diversified kind of investment is where you have a combination of, let's say you have a project in a certain country, then the finance will come from one country, technology comes from another country, and you land it in some other country, and then this is where really international cooperation takes place, and it is happening. And again, I have to mention about Astana International Financial Center. This is where it plays its certain role. Now, the other the other approach that we are trying to push forward is when we have, let's say, Russian technologies. We have foreign companies with finance and expertise as well. We combine the things, and then we go to other countries, not only in CIS, but in the Middle East and Southeast Asia as well. And I think this is something which because basically we should talk about tools and models. I think we got carried away with this sustainability kind of thing. So if to be specific on the tools and models.
It's a sustainability panel.
Whatever. Okay. I mean, we still have to look at tools and models, you know. So I think it could be one of the models.
I think for the purpose of the audience and the panel, to be honest, to define what you mean by sustainability. I think there's a clear lack here of what we're talking about. So what I've learned from all of you is that everyone uses the word sustainability, but no one's been clear about how to use it. There's financial sustainability independent.
Actually, you'll be the best one.
No, I would actually appreciate if you did, because I think it's more interesting if you, in your opinions, because I think you're driving a lot of initiatives. I have a lot of respect for that, but I think actually defining what you mean by sustainability would help, and each of you, because I think only financial sustainability is business as usual. I think we have to be honest about that, because if we're talking about sustainability only in that sense, we're not talking about sustainability. So let's not call the panel that. It's just intellectual.
Thank you very much for
Okay,
your question.
when it comes from, I mean, on my definition of sustainability, I think it's always about creating new kind of industries for our countries, which were never there before, and creating it with active participation of locals. And this is where we got like expertise from all around the world. We try to mix it up together, and then we come up with something that will be changing the whole landscape and will be a new trend for coming 10, 20, 30 years ahead. This is what I understand sustainability from this investment point of view. And I think most of the governments are quite happy with this, because it gives some kind of sense of security and things like that when you have this involvement of different parties, and then you are creating entirely new industries, and it also gives feeling to the government that you are in the global trend of those new economic activities.
Thank you. Navroop, I think you answer that one first, shortly, please, because we have more other questions which you also like to answer.
Can I quickly answer that one? Because I think it's really critical. Yeah, so thank you, first of all, for your question. The issue of sustainability is around that humans are one of the species on the planet. We share this planet with billions of other species, right? But we are the only species that have the ability to manipulate our environments. And we're doing it to a point that it is causing systemic changes into the entire ecosystem. So my background is in innovation, and I look at systems as a whole. So the planet as a single organism. Right now, this is out of touch, because what we've done is we've tapped into resources, the energy of the sun that was locked into the planet through fossil fuels. And we've tapped into that, and right now we are in what we call an energy transition, a global energy transition, where we are harnessing that energy over and beyond the system can contain, causing large-scale systemic changes unlike the planet has ever seen before. So it's not about climate change, it is about the fact that the uncertainty that it poses and the impact that it poses to humans, to other species, to the planetary ecosystem is completely unknown. So we can talk about financial sustainability all we like, but there are more refugees in the world right now, climate migrants, than there were ever before. Ultimately, it's resources. Ultimately, it's a claim to resources. What is money, right? Define money. Money is a claim on energy spent somewhere. So the physics of sustainability is this energy and currently energy transition. So when you're talking about sustainability, it's fundamentally tied to the ecology. So economists talk about the economy as if ecology doesn't exist, as if the resources are unlimited, but that is not the case. So the new measures we need are accounting for those, right? Are accounting for the planetary boundaries, planetary upper limits. And you know, we can talk about very specific measures, FDI stuff, and I did macroeconomics for 10 years and that sort of thing. But you know, again, it's business as usual. It doesn't help anyone. Essentially, what you see is a race where the Western countries, the first world, has made it, and they have put in place these, you know, measures. And now you see the rest of the world trying to follow suit, right? Trying to do the same things, trying to develop the same way. But that is only going to increase that systemic risk that is already in the system. So what needs to happen is that leadership and innovation needs to come from regions that are outside of the West and outside of the way things were so far. And so I'll leave with that here.
Thank you, Navroop. Thank you, Linar, for your answers. I would like to move on to the next question, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Adam and I'm a co-founder of Digital Bank. So it's my third day in Davos and it's my second day in this great panel. So yesterday we were talking about sustainability and exploitation. And I would prefer that you have been started with the nice description that you gave about the ecology and so on, because what is lacking here, I think, during all these days, you're talking, Mr. Boris told us about sustainability and investing in companies that create revenues and working places and so on. Would you invest in a Swedish company that took in rent 2 million square kilometers in Latvia, and they're cutting wood now? They're creating great revenues, great percents of income. Would you invest in this? Navroop, yesterday, I don't know if you were here, fashion industry based on women's need to be beautiful pollutes more than anything else, more than oil industry,
those are
right?
the demands of patriarchy. So I'm gonna.
No, I'm not. Hold on. So.
Just responding to women's needs.
Thank you. Can I, for the sake of time, because there are other questions.
Sake of time.
What is your question?
It's not a question. It's more like 2 days ago I've seen this group of a little bit strange people walking on the streets of Davos and saying change now, and there was a enforced police group of people that took them away from here. So they said change now. What I would prefer, my background is biology and biochemistry. I'm a doctor in biochemistry, so I think that we should start from the beginning, the nature, the Mother Earth, which gives us everything. And if we want to invest in a company, we should make kind of a green index and understand if this company pollutes more or less. If this company, it might create less working places, but it can affect our planet less, because all things we're talking about eventually is money here on this Congress, I mean this week. But it's an anniversary, 50th anniversary of Davos. My question is, where is Amazonian wood, and what happens with rivers and ocean and plastic and all this stuff? So maybe we should start with, you know, very basic things like ecology, and to put ecology at the very first layer of all businesses in the world, and then it might change.
Thank you, Adam. I think it's very fair, and also come back to what you said. What is actually the basics of sustainability? What are we talking about? I think you, Linar and Navroop, you also said it's the ecology point of view to deal in balance with the natural resources, because that's what it's all about. Mother Earth doesn't need us, but we need Mother Earth. That's where that's actually where we're all going to. And capital is a very strong force to drive change if you act really. So Jacopo, you want to react, and then I would actually close it off. We have one more question, so please keep it short. Then one more question, and then we need to close off the panel, unfortunately, due to the sake of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for all the questions, and also for fostering debate. Maybe I also wasn't clear when explaining my slides. So I started with constraints. I don't think anyone in the room is voting for pollution or for destroying the environment. And my first slide was exactly that. It was just trying to give you the framework of what we mean by sustainability, or not we, the countries we interact with. And the main hurdles to doing things properly in the sense of doing things that reduce damage to the environment or revert past damage that was done to the environment is usually money and also people's reaction. So one might say, okay, I'm against pollution, but you have a watch that pollutes, right? Or or you have a phone, right? Two batteries, quite polluting. So we go from a theory where everyone, I think, here agrees we have to reduce pollution. Some countries can already do it. They have no excuse. I'm paraphrasing perhaps what you were trying to say. Others cannot, because if they say, I want to transition from coal, it will take time and money. Also because maybe they're overexposed to foreign investors, and so they're squeezed between the local population, so democracy, right? And also the foreign investor who wants to be remunerated. So in practice, it's always a trade-off between interests. And we all know what the final goal is. And what I was mentioning here is that countries have tools which allow them to bypass such hurdles. So if they have to pay out investors and they need money to invest in new schools or open a new degree in chemistry, right? Because their country doesn't have, cannot train enough biologists that can help with the transition. There's other sources of funds which can be tapped globally, which do not require a return on investment. This is what I was trying to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. One more question here.
There's been a lot of greenwashing. So everything that you mentioned exists in the market today. There are lots of ESG funds and whatnot funds, and it's greenwashing. Mostly. The question is, there is a lack of listed securities in the capital markets in whichever region you go for credible investment opportunities in this space, due to which the amount of money that could flow into this kind of companies is very much limited. Because when we talk about large-scale funds or investments, they look for volume. They don't care about 1 million here, 10 million there. They look for billion and above as a minimum volume. And this is my question to whoever wants to pick it up. How are you going to create that volume in listed securities market? That's the key that has to happen. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Boris, I would also like Boris to give an answer, please. Thank you. Boris, can you please give a short answer to the question the sir has answered?
Absolutely. Well, there are listed securities is not the only solution here. So there are funds, there are platforms that take out different investors and shareholders' money and invest into an agreed industry, for example. And being sustainable, I would like to repeat myself, it's not about, like taking Latvian forest and moving into Sweden, so Swedish people get more money in taxes. Sustainability is a long-term game. So of course, any business that proves to be sustainable attracts more money than someone who is not, somebody who is from the 19th or from the 20th century. So it could be either, as you suggested, listed securities. There are some alternative stock exchanges. And there are also some specialized investment funds. There are some angel investors. Again, angel investors are playing maybe not such a noticeable role, but they're sometimes the drivers, because people would be investing as a matter of, certain extent of goodwill. And then other larger volumes, the billion-dollar funds that you mentioned, would follow.
Thank you very much. Short, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So BlackRock just announced that they're divesting in fossil fuels completely. That is the biggest hedge fund in the world. Hedge fund. JP Morgan announced $1 trillion investment. I don't know how it's going to play out, and I make no claims. I've not worked in a bank, and I don't intend to. Okay, there you go. So I think what needs to happen is to create enough pressure on corporations and holding them accountable to what the demands of the ecology are, and again, for humans, because the planet would go on, right? So I think the value of a space like the World Economic Forum is that we could foster that understanding, and these leaders, I prefer the term innovators because innovation can come from anyone rather than the implicit followers when you use the term leaders. But you know, create that accountability for things to change. And the thing is, with change, with emerging tech and tech in general, so it seems like it's going to take forever, but when change happens, it happens immediately. You achieve an inflection point, and then, and exactly so. It's happening already, is what I would say, and that perception has to change first of all.
Thank you very much. I would like to close this panel off with thanking you all for your interaction. I think you posed some really good questions. What is exactly sustainability? What are we actually talking about? And I think also with all the different capacities and all the different skills we have here, it's about creating a new standard on an international level, co-creation with each other to make a change which is badly needed and fast. And that's why we need capital, because it's a strong force to act on it. Thank you very much for your participants, and please feel free to interact with us afterwards.